Welcome to the Making the Most of Your Piece of Nature series, hosted by the Pennsylvania Bureau of Forestry. In this series, we invite you to transform your piece of nature, creating a refuge for native wildlife and insects, and a place to enjoy the beauty of our native flora and fauna. I'm excited to introduce you to some examples of folks that are making the most of their pieces of nature. We'll get started in Clarion County, visiting the County Conservation District's new facility with Alicia Ramsey.
Hi, I'm Alicia Ramsey, the ENS and GGLVR technician with the Clarion Conservation District. For all those who don't converse in acronyms, that means my job is two parts: erosion and sedimentation control as delegated by the PA Department of Environmental Protection, and also implementing and administering the Clarion County's dirt, gravel, and low volume road program. I appreciate being able to share our project in this workshop, making the most of your backyard. This is about Clarion Conservation District's backyard rain garden. A little bit of background about the Clarion Conservation District. Previously, we have been located in multi-program office buildings, most recently in the County Human Service building, pictured in this photograph here. The Conservation District also provided stormwater management plan reviews for the county between 2013 and March of last year. Based on the county's Act 167 ordinance, which is really any new impervious area within the requirements. So the exciting news is that in September of last year, the Conservation District made the move to purchase a building on a small lot in a residential area centrally located in Clarion. However, it was determined some additional parking area would be needed for district board meetings, educational programs, any storage for the district, anything that the district would need to operate, of course. Knowing our stormwater requirements and also, what those impacts can be from stormwater runoff, of course, some stormwater management was desired for any new impervious area we might create. So that's where this thought process started. To explain stormwater runoff a little bit, we want to know what it is. Really, it's just any precipitation. And rain, snow, melt, especially with these larger storm events, we need to consider what's happening when we get that precipitation. So as you can see in this diagram here, when we have undisturbed areas, meadows, forests, we get a lot of infiltration, also a lot of evapotranspiration. When we start adding houses, that decreases that infiltration as well as evapotranspiration. Then when we start adding more impervious, whether it's pavement or concrete or more buildings, more roads, of course those numbers decrease even further. What that means is we're going to have more runoff in those situations. Stormwater runoff in mind, when we're looking at our property, which is pictured in this image from Google here. You can see the building, a small amount of parking. We knew we needed more, so really the back portion of the property was the most ideal location. The property boundary is shown in this photo. And you can see it was noted the back of the property sloped towards the southwest corner. Note the proximity to the downslope neighbor in this photo. So obviously that was a consideration when we're thinking about adding more impervious. How is it going to affect them and any other downslope neighbors? So first we need to answer how much additional parking area would be required. We decided roughly 5 spaces in terms of cars. And we wanted to think about how that could be added with the least amount of disturbance while avoiding any additional stormwater runoff. And then last, whatever stormwater management tools we decided to use, how could it be used as an educational tool for any other landowners, commercial or otherwise? This is something, this is a residential lot, it's less than a half acre, so this is something anyone could do in their own backyard. Hopefully you don't need to add a significant amount of parking like we did, but it is something that's feasible for anyone in maybe a smaller scale. So part of why we decided to go with a rain garden for our design is it can be both functional and beautiful. Of course, we didn't want to create an eyesore. We didn't need a structural BMP like a detention basin. We weren't creating, a significant amount of impervious area. But a rain garden could be both of those things. And here's just a kind of basic explanation. You collect whether it's just rainwater or runoff. It's collected into a depressed bed. You generally select plants that are, well adapted to either soaking up water or growing well in water. And then that water filters through both the soil and the plants, and it helps to remove any pollutants if there are any. Groundwater is recharged, so we're promoting infiltration. And last, and most importantly, it's promoting those plants to grow, which would provide beauty and habitat, whether it's your yard or a business. In this case, like I said, we were deciding to go with edible. So what we intend to do with our native edible plants is use it as more of an educational tool in other methods as well. Once we had an approximate amount of parking areas that we need, as well as what type of BMP we were going to use, that being an edible rain garden, we kind of sketched out some approximate dimensions. As you can see in this sketch, hopefully, there was some downspouts on the back of the building towards the rear where we were putting the parking, so that became a consideration. Also, we looked at soils of the site, used Web Soil Survey, which is attached here. Also the topography, it slopes towards the southwest, as I mentioned. I wanted to also consider the cost of what it would take to install both of these practices, really. And then, of course, had to do it in the space we had available, which it's, as I said, a pretty small lot, so that was definitely a consideration. Once we had our design, how much space we knew we had available, we actually kind of oversized it because we had a little bit more space available. Unfortunately, we did remove one tree, a few small shrubs. That's a peach tree there in the background of the second photo. And we intend to, of course, add a lot more plants to this space. I just wanted to show the rain garden in process. So the first picture was just like the space dug out, and then the second picture we're already have the modified soils and some of the mulch, and then here in the foreground is an outlet structure. So basically this is installed as like an overflow sort of when you think of structures, and this was installed kind of as a backup plan, certainly based on the size of what we needed and the amount of impervious area. It isn't necessarily required, but it does provide some peace of mind, perhaps, especially knowing we have a downslope neighbor very close by. Here's a couple more photos, practically complete in these photos. And the second one, you'll notice we did install a fence around the rain garden. We did that in two parts because we're a business and there is a slope on the upper side of the rain garden, kind of as a safety factor. Remove any liability of someone walking around in the snow and falling kind of down the hill. And also the deer seem to like the neighborhood here, and even though a lot of the native plants we've chosen are deer resistant, we want to preserve our investment. So I set up a time-lapse video during the construction of the rain garden, and it is set up at the lower end of the lot, so it's a different perspective than some of the pictures have been. But something I want to point out is you'll notice there's a larger excavator taking part in some of the digging. The reason it was on site was really for the construction of the parking area. So when you're thinking about maybe installing this at a different location, an excavator that large may not be needed. And certainly, again, this is an oversized rain garden. So it was really there for a different reason. And it did come in handy because there was some larger rocks. As you can see, the smaller excavator is what they ended up doing most of the work with, I believe. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're watching. Here's one final photo of the rain garden as it stands now. We were able to get a few plants in before too late. I just want to mention a few things. as a takeaway here, this is a pretty big scale. We added the fence to kind of protect our investment, and also, to as a safety measure. That isn't necessarily, a requirement, obviously, and ours is a bit on the larger scale, but this is something that, could be done on any scale, in lots of locations. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Hopefully look for more to come. We intend to follow up with more plants and monitoring and hopefully some workshops. So feel free to reach out with any questions. Thank you.
Next, we're going to take a look at Bradford Woods. There we'll meet Ward Allenbach, who is bringing his neighbors together to promote conservation, and Larry Roberts, who is growing American chestnuts from seed.
Hi, I'm Ward Allenbach, president of the Bradford Woods Conservancy. We're a small, nonprofit organization, a fund of the Allegheny Land Trust, working in a small, wooded residential community in the North Hills of Pittsburgh for the past 27 years. Since 2013, we've been working to educate our friends and neighbors about the woods that we all share through a campaign that we've called My Backyard Woods. We started this campaign because of the growing number of threats to our woods, including the aging of our trees, lack of diversity and succession, deer overpopulation, invasive bugs, trees, and weeds, and the impact of changing weather patterns brought on by climate change. As we saw it then, and still see it now, if we don't act together, there's a chance that there won't be many woods left in just 50 years. The focus of the campaign is on homeowners, because they own most of the woods that make up our community. And most have no idea of the physical threats to their homes, property values, and quality of life that are right there in their own backyards. We wrote a strategic plan with a vision for our community to have healthy woods with a healthy ecology for all current and future residents to enjoy. Our goals include things like helping residents to manage the woods on their property through stewardship and sustainability, managing invasive plants and insects, reducing deer damage on public and residential properties, creating a welcome environment for birds and other beneficial wildlife, and strengthening borough ordinances relating to trees. We've held dozens of public meetings, events, and workshops on everything from tree pruning to lanternflies to bird watching, and engaging hundreds of our residents and our neighbors from surrounding communities too. We've planted and given away for planting over 1,000 native trees, plants, and shrubs. We've dedicated pages of our website and created social media posts centered on promoting healthy woods. In 2018, we held a Celebration of Trees event that attracted more than 150 people to listen to speakers, browse tables, watch a tree planting demonstration, and take home native saplings and protective fencing for planting on their own properties. We took a community survey in 2019 and got a response rate of almost 40% of all households, finding strong support for tree protections. 2 of our residents have started an American chestnut project for our community, growing saplings that we offer to Conservancy members, friends, and neighbors. More than 100 have been planted in the past 2 years, and the plan is to continue giving them away every year on Earth Day. Larry Roberts is one of those residents. DCNR has been a great partner for us. Foresters like Celine Colbert have visited our borough several times, almost every year since 2014, to conduct voluntary property consultations with residents who want to learn more about their woods. Together, we visited more than 100 properties in Bradford Woods, and DCNR has helped us to compile a wonderful arsenal of education materials on the kinds of details that most people would miss, like lists of native trees and shrubs and where they're most likely to prosper, whether that be in dry areas or wet areas, sunny areas or shaded areas. I mean, tree and shrub identification just isn't a skill that 90% of the public has. Understanding why natives are important and why invasives like barberry are harmful just isn't something that most people think about. The science of biodiversity and forest succession just isn't something that most people see by looking out their window. But when we can physically show people on their own properties what it all means, then we get beyond these ideas as abstract concepts. We've taken up the mantra of plant and protect, because the woods don't take care of themselves anymore. There are just too many threats. So simply planting isn't enough to ensure the future of our woods. We need to be aware of the threats. We need to educate ourselves and our neighbors. We need to be proactive in managing our woods if we want them to be around. And in Bradford Woods, a strong majority wants them to be around. It's one of the main reasons that we choose to live here. My Backyard Woods has been so well received by our community that we've even talked about changing the name of the campaign someday to Our Backyard Woods. Because really, that's exactly what they are. Thanks so much for listening.
Hi, my name is Larry Roberts. I live in Bradford Woods, Pennsylvania. And this is my chestnut project. These are Dunstan chestnuts that my grandkids and I ordered from Chestnut Ridge of Pike County in Illinois. And we ordered 291 this year. And once we get them in early October, we get our containers with damp peat moss and layer them down, put the chestnuts in there, mark our names on there and the date, and then we put them in the refrigerator till about the beginning of March. Hopefully when they'll all germinate and we open them up and we'll check them out and make sure they have roots on them, and the ones that do have roots, we'll put into our milk containers that have soil mix in them that are totally saturated, and we'll put them under the grow lights that are downstairs or in the sunroom. And by the time Earth Day comes around, they'll be about 18 inches tall, and we're going to donate them to the neighbors here in Bradford Woods, also to Tree Pittsburgh, and to a lot of my friends at work. This is something that really appeals to my grandkids and I. It's a project we do together. And hopefully someday we can look back and see these trees grow to 100 feet tall. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Rachel Mahoney, and I am the Environmental Education Specialist at Forbes State Forest. Today, we are going to hear from our special guest, Ryan Mahoney, and to hear about his different permaculture and landscaping techniques that he has done on his own quarter-of-an-acre plot in suburban North Huntington Township, Pennsylvania.
One day when I was making my fruit smoothie, I thought about how many miles bananas had to travel to make their way to Pennsylvania and how much additional carbon dioxide was produced in the process. Along with the environmental sustainability benefits of growing our own food, it's also a fun hobby that we can grow healthy, fresher produce than we could buy at a grocery store. It led me to research quote-unquote exotic fruits, and that was how I discovered pawpaws. From there I found out that frozen pawpaw pulp could be a replacement for my frozen bananas in smoothies, and I thought to myself, why can't I replace strawberries and blueberries with homegrown fruit too? Hi, my name is Ryan. As Rachel said, we bought our house in North Huntington Township, Pennsylvania in 2016. It's a small quarter-acre lot, but we are hoping to grow most of the produce and fruit that we use for the year once our fruit trees have matured in a few years. We installed our first raised bed in 2018 for gardening for our vegetables, but since then we've installed a second bed for vegetables as well as a raised bed for our strawberries and blueberries. with the blueberries and the strawberries that we have planted in our raised beds, we also have a couple of different other fruits planted around the property. We have elderberry and pawpaws, as I may have mentioned before, as well as jujube and pears and a persimmon tree. Years ago, when we were still living in our apartment, we attended Mother Earth News Fair at Seven Springs and spent a couple of years going to that. Part of the experience there was learning about a concept for landscaping called permaculture, and part of permaculture is using materials within your landscape and melding them together with food and different kinds of plants that are pollinators for beneficial insects like honeybees, and making them a part of your landscaping around your house. Along this north face of our house, where we don't get a lot of sunlight, we have planted a few different wild native flowers, such as wild geranium, wild ginger, and foam flower. I also plan to plant some currants that are disease resistant, as well as some honeyberries, which are from northern climates and don't need as much sunlight on this side of the house. We have some bigger plans for 2021 for expanding our edible landscaping. We're planning on removing many of the non-fruit bearing shrubs and different bushes around the house to replace them with things that produce food for us. I've ordered a lot of different fruits and bushes as trees and as ground cover. Some of those are huckleberries, haskap or honeyberries, flowering quince, serviceberry, aronia berry, as well as apples, some more jujubes, some pawpaws, more persimmons, and also mulberries. One of the more important things that you can do before planting any of your landscaping is planning out exactly where you want to plant everything before you start digging. This includes factors such as the distance between the trees, available sunlight, airflow, possibility of deer pressure or other animals, and your soil composition, whether it's acidic or basic, based on the type of berry or fruit that you are trying to plant. For most homeowners in a similar situation to us, you also want your landscaping to be aesthetically pleasing. Unlike most garden vegetables, fruit trees as well as berries are a multi-year commitment. Some berries, such as blueberries and strawberries, can produce fruit in the first couple of years, but things like pawpaw and persimmon can take 5 to 10 years before you start to bear fruit. So that's an important factor to take into consideration. Another thing to be aware of is that you don't want to plant any large growing trees right beside your house. They may not get enough sunlight or water, and it may create an issue for your foundation down the road if you don't plan ahead to address that. It's also very important to research which fruits that you plan to plant will do well in the zone that you're located in. For us, we live in Zone 6A. So, for example, a Macintosh apple will not do well in our area, but one of its seedlings, Macoun, will do well. So stuff like that is good to consider when picking the particular varieties that you plan to plant. I hope that the information that we have provided you today is helpful for you to make your own decisions with increasing the edibility of your landscape. Some of the resources that I've used to research the plants that we are planting on our property are a couple different nurseries. Some that I would suggest are Edible Landscaping in Virginia, as well as England's Orchard and Nursery in Kentucky, and Burnt Ridge Nursery out in Washington State. There are plenty of other good ones out there. Just make sure you do your own research on that. There's also a few different books that I would suggest. A really good one to start with is Edible Landscaping with a Permaculture Twist by Michael Judd. That was the one that really got me interested in doing permaculture.
Thank you for joining the Pennsylvania Bureau of Forestry for our Making the Most of Your Piece of Nature video series. If you're interested in learning more about this topic or others, please visit DCNR's website, where you can find information on landscaping with native plants, invasive plants, and a list of service forester by county. Your service forester is a free resource to help you make the most of your piece of nature.